take, and she did hundreds of hours of work and still has a lot more work with us on this investigation. Quite frankly, without Nicole and her energy and her expertise, we could not have brought this investigation together. It was a very complicated investigation. So as I explain it to you today, I'm going to give you snapshots of what occurred. Because if I try to start with this Operation Hotwire and get down in the weeds, we would be here all day long. But I also want to tell you that it's our cooperation with our police department teammates that make all of this possible. What we did for the first time that I can remember in the history of the sheriff's office, and I've been here a long time. In fact, I've been here so long that most of y'all weren't alive when I started, and maybe your parents weren't alive. This is the first time that we've done a street level wire intercept of communications on trafficking and dealing in drugs. And you go, the first time. Normally we do it on huge operations and organizations because there's a lot of expense and a lot of time and a lot of effort into putting this together. But let me explain why we went to all of that exceptional effort. Let me take you back to 2019. There was a period of time between April the 24th and July the 9th where we had 5 home invasion robberies in this county. During these 5 home invasion robberies, people's lives were put at stake. They were robberies with firearms. They were exceptionally violent. On one of the 5, an 8-year-old boy was pistol whipped. And we were left with very little information and, quite frankly, very little cooperation by some of our victims, even though they were victims. And then on Thursday, June the 27th, during this period of time, Shay Collins was the victim of a home invasion robbery, and she was murdered. And nobody knew anything. And it was crickets. We have this young lady who's lost her life, and no one's talking. So I'd sat down with the chiefs in my organization, Chief Williams, Chief Lester, our narcotics team, and I go, I am over this. We're going to rain hell down on these street dealers of drugs and these traffickers. We're going to make them know that your home invasions with firearms where you kick people's doors open in the middle of the night is not acceptable. When you murder young ladies in the middle of the night, it's not acceptable. And I want them and all of their friends and colleagues to know today, all your buddies are in jail because this lady died. All your buddies are in jail because you pistol whipped an 8-year-old boy in a home invasion robbery. I want you to know that. It's wrong to traffic in drugs. It's wrong to sell drugs. And we know the devastating effect of those that use drugs. So that's when we got with our partners at the state attorney's office and said it's all circled around drugs. Well, what's important about that? We still have people across this state and country and legislators with 3 brain cells, and 2 of them aren't working well, that think that drugs are low-level, nonviolent crimes. Well, stand by. I'm about to show you how wrong you are and how whoever is suggesting to the community, whether it be in Polk County, across the state or across the nation that drugs are low-level, nonviolent crimes, stand by and watch. Tell Shay Collins' family it's low-level, nonviolent crime. This Mac 9 with a suppressor. Doesn't everybody that deals with, quote, low-level, nonviolent crimes carry fully automatic firearms around with them with silencers? Or sawed-off shotguns? We're hot. Our investigative teams, joined by our police colleagues, decided we were going to make a difference. So what was next? So we went up on this pattern of criminal activity with our wire intercepts. And what we found was beginning December 3rd was when we turned the first switch on after a lot of investigation through the summer and the fall. It ended on March the 16th when, at least that piece of it, when we turned the switch off. We had 7 different phones, 2 more extensions, 9 different phones and extensions that we went up on. There were 37,000 text and telephone calls made during the operation. At the conclusion of the wire portion of this, the interceptions, we executed 12 search warrants, which resulted in criminal charges against 74 people. 68 of them are in custody today. We filed 711 cases with the state attorney's office. And you'll understand why we love Nicole Orr. She says, I'm not finished filing charges yet. It just takes time. So for all of you who are booked in jail or waiting to go to jail, whenever we find you and you're hiding, you can run, you can hide, but we're going to find you. Understand, we're not finished with you yet. There's more criminal charges on the way. We seized 12 different kinds of drugs. We seized $500,000 worth of street-level drugs. Included in that, on one occasion, through one search warrant, we seized 30 grams of fentanyl. Fentanyl is exceptionally deadly. DEA tells us 2 grains of fentanyl, the size of 2 grains of salt, is enough to kill a human being. When we seized that 30 grams of fentanyl, let me put this in perspective. There was enough fentanyl there to kill between 9,000 and 15,000 people. We seized 50,000 in cash. We seized 6 handguns, sawed-off shotgun, our machine gun, and our suppressor. These suspects have a history of 1,320 previous criminal charges. Did you hear me? 1,320 previous charges. Currently, we have 2 heroin deaths that we suspect came from the heroin these folks sold. As a side note, last week alone, 3 people died of drug overdoses. We don't have the drug screens back. Initial information tells us they died of heroin fentanyl overdoses. We've investigated as many as 30 heroin and fentanyl overdoses in the last few years. And a lot of the drugs came from these folks here. So now the search warrants are done. The arrest warrants have issued, and last Thursday, our detectives began the roundup, and that's when we arrested 68. And we currently, of the 68 we have in custody, there's still 6 that are at large. 22 of these people have been to state prison before. 2 of them are in the country illegally. 8 of them admitted that they got either EBT, which is, as food stamps, or WIC, or some kind of federal assistance. But now I'm going to give you a snapshot of just a few of these folks. Here's the first phone we went up on. It was Robert Hurd's. And there's going to be a common denominator in here as I explain this for a few minutes. Robert Hurd is 50 years old. 50 years old. We're not dealing with kids. What does that mean? It means experience. Experience dealing drugs. He was on probation for a criminal charge, i.e. being arrested in one of our prostitution ops, but he's still out dealing drugs. He has no respect for the system. It didn't bother him that he was on probation. He's charged with 58 counts. This phone led us to Michael Williams' phone. Michael Williams is 48 years of age. He was the second phone we went up on. He's a big operator. He's facing 173 charges. He's been dealing drugs for 20 to 25 years. He's one of the big-time guys on the street. Michael Williams knows the techniques of narcotics investigation as well as our most experienced detectives. Michael Williams will have photographs of our undercover equipment posted online to his friends within hours of days of us instituting the equipment. Michael Williams can talk the language. Michael Williams knows how to set an operation up so that we can't infiltrate it. He deals with the same few friends that he's known or grown up with forever. And if they get in trouble, he doesn't deal with them anymore because he knows there's a chance that they may flip on him. 50 years old, 48 years old, experienced. The third phone we went up on is Michael Booker, 56 years old. Got a little snow in the beard there. Very experienced. Knows the narcotics investigation business as well as we do. We have heard of and tried to get to some of these guys for years and years and years and have been unable to until we went up on this wire. We know he's been dealing drugs along with the other Michael 20, 25 years. Then there's Lasan Etienne. He's 42 years old. He's been dealing 15 years or more. He's at large. He's hiding. We heard he may be in South Florida at this time. He was the fourth phone, 16 charges. He was out on bond for dealing in stolen property. That didn't slow down his narcotics dealing at all. He's out on bond. That's the second one who is actively engaged in the criminal justice system, but that doesn't bother them at all. And then there's the youngster of the group. They call him Pop Rogers, Kenneth Rogers. He's 35. He's been dealing 15 years or more. Very sly, very astute. He currently faces 42 criminal charges. He was also the victim in one of the home invasion robberies. He was one of the victims. But at the same time, we had source information that says that he was talking of doing robberies and ripping off other drug dealers. Rogers is out on other minor charges, but he's still running his operation. He was the big guy supplying a lot of the drugs. Oh, we're going to hear from his mama because, you see, she thinks he's an angel. Not an angel. Mama, he's not an angel, so when you get to running your gator later today about my poor baby, well, just understand your poor baby is the big guy in the operation. Understand, because there were home invasion robberies and Shay died. That's why we unleashed a torrent of the criminal justice system on you, because we're going to find out who killed Shay. We're going to find out who did those home invasion robberies. You can all sit down there in the county jail and say, well, see, you robbed me, and you robbed me, and you talked about robbing me, and who was it? Somebody needs to go tell that sheriff who killed Shay, so they'll leave us alone. Well, we're not going to leave you alone. But believe you me, till we figure out who killed Shay, we're going to keep on keeping on. We're going to make you so miserable your third cousin doesn't sleep well at night. Then there's Quashawn Burgess. He's out on bond, still dealing drugs. He was out on bond for dealing in 1.5 kilos of cocaine. He's still dealing for Rogers. He doesn't have the experience of Rogers yet. Then there's Willie Adam. He's already been to prison for 10 years for trafficking. He did 9 of the 10, and now he's facing a new minimum mandatory for trafficking in cocaine. Then there's Florinado Camacho. He has dealt cocaine and heroin to Rogers. Oh, did I tell you? He's wearing an ankle monitor. Did you hear me? He's wearing an ankle monitor because he's already entered a plea in federal prison for dealing drugs, but it hasn't slowed him down. He's got to pay his attorneys. He's got to get money for his family before he goes off to federal prison. Hey, federal judges, he's snubbing you. Hey, federal prosecutors, he's snubbing you. Hey, federal law enforcement officers, he's snubbing you. He's wearing your ankle monitor to our dope deals. Well, if you need to know where he is, he's in the county jail, waiting sentencing for charges. Hadn't even slowed down. Carlos Cortez. Let me talk about Carlos for a minute. We're doing a separate investigation on the Carlos Cortez group. And during a separate investigation, not dealing with this at all, lo and behold, we find out some of his people are moving drugs back and forth between Pop Rogers' group. He had his own business. He was doing his own thing, but we were able to tie it together because another group of our detectives are working him. When we served his search warrant, he had an underground tunnel in this house. Had it all somehow concreted or in, room enough for him to sit down there with his television and his monitor and his surveillance cameras. He's a known gang member. He's reputed to be part of the Mexican mafia. I can tell you right now, his group of folks are dangerous folks. And they're even into this other operation. Let me go through some just notes before I round up or end up here. Alexis Torres Galindo, who was dealing with this operation, has a previous murder charge out of Puerto Rico. We can't find out any disposition, but I'm told Puerto Rico is not known for keeping great records. Maybe the more money you pay somebody off, the worse the records get. I'm just thinking out loud. So let me put this in perspective. Most of the 12 search warrants were served in the last 2 weeks. We started the roundup on Thursday. Guess what happened early Sunday morning? Late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, 12:15 a.m., just after midnight Saturday night on May 17th. Alfonso Payne Jr. was gunned down in the middle of the street, less than 50 yards from where we served a search warrant. We found Alfonso at 40th Street and Atkins Road in Winter Haven in the middle of the street, not 50 yards from 3951 Atkins Road where we served a search warrant. One of the rumors on the street is that he was killed in retaliation. They suspected Alfonso might have been working with law enforcement. They murdered him. Alfonso wasn't working with law enforcement. He was not a source. He was not involved with us. He has a criminal record. We've put him in jail before. But they're still murdering people. Some of these groups here had already bonded out. Some of them are in, some of them are out when he was murdered. We need to solve this murder, but nobody knows anything. It's not all right for Alfonso to die. It's not all right for Shay to die. It's not all right for people not to tell us who did these murders. But understand this. If you're in the county jail, or if you were arrested during this roundup and you have information about this, it's important to tell us. No one's going to rest easy until we solve these murders. Every life is important to us. Every life is important to us. We owe it to their family to find the answers and to bring the perpetrators to justice. And we're going to do that. But understand, she is the one that started it. And this is the one that died the last time. I can't tell you for absolute sure one had anything to do with this operation, but I am a trained detective. And it happened in the same area, in the same time frame, after we put a bunch of bad guys in jail, and a lot of them know exactly how narcotics investigations are done because of their experience. Oh, by the way, did I tell you that the big guys here, many of which I highlighted, they hire the brand name defense attorneys in this community. They all have brand name defense attorneys. It's going to be a fight. but we're going to send them to prison for a very, very long time. Are there any questions?
Sheriff, to clarify, can you just explain exactly how these interceptions work? You said 9 phones and $3 text messages, or?
That's correct. We receive their communications, whether it's text messages or whether it is telephone calls. And there's a very elaborate process that you have to go through when you receive these communications. About you have to minimize, you have to only listen to pertinent calls. So it's a very complex situation that occurs.
Sheriff, what was the first search warrant and then the last, well, some haven't been served yet, but.
Well, first search warrants actually happened a few months ago, but most of the 12 happened within the last 2 weeks.
How did you choose which phones to intercept?
It was based on the investigation. We had to exhaust other investigative methods, which didn't take very long with this experienced group of criminals. And then you follow the criminal conduct on the phone. And when one phone leads you to another phone, and understand they use boost phones. So they'll use this phone a couple of days and throw it in the garbage, and then they'll go to another phone. Then we have to go to their next phone, and then they use that phone a few days and they throw it in the garbage, and you go to the next phone. They think they're slick. We know how to chase phones.
Sheriff, how concerned are you about more violence?
I'm always concerned about violence whenever it involves the sale and the trafficking in drugs. This is a subculture. It's an illegal criminal enterprise, and they will kill you to get your drugs. They will kill you to take your drugs. They will kill you over not paying your bills. They will kill you if they think you're involved in the other group or you're cutting into their business. It's to make it simple, it'd be like the Chevrolet dealership and the Ford dealership being on opposite sides of the road and shooting at each other back and forth across the road for taking a customer.
In many ways, you can interpret this as bad guy versus bad guy. Everyone else, good people are isolated from it. Why should people in Polk County care about this, who are law-abiding citizens?
Well, because these folks are dealing drugs to your children. It's being imported, it's being trafficked, it's being dealt, and then it is moving down to your children. They're also recruiting people to work in levels of their organization, lower levels of their organization. And there's collateral damage when the 8-year-old gets pistol whipped in a home invasion robbery. When Shay gets shot and killed trying to help her husband hold the door closed so they can't get in the house. Shay was at home cooking dinner, had food on the stove from where she was preparing dinner when she died. I'm angry about that. I would like the chief to speak for just a minute. Chief Walensky is a dear friend of mine. He retired from the sheriff's office and ran investigations for years and years and years for us, and there's no one that knows this business any better than him. He's now the chief in Haines City and one of our partners in this investigation. Chief?
Thank you.
So you bring up a good point about good people being isolated. That's actually not true. So all the people in Haines City that were arrested are from Oakland for the city of Haines City. Michael Williams here that the sheriff spoke about, one of the top dogs of the system, and during his search warrant, when they executed the search warrant, they found his father, keeping in mind Michael makes a lot of money, right? Got all these brand name attorneys. So his father was in bed he has dementia, he can't handle himself, and it was full of urine. So if that doesn't shock the conscience of the public, I don't know what will. But when we talk about Oakland, there are a lot of great people that live in Oakland. yet you have this small group that seems to get larger that wants to take over. And shots get fired. And so far, we have been very fortunate with these shots being fired that innocent people have not been killed. But the day is going to come, trust me, that a child gets killed or some other person that has nothing to do with the dope. But keep in mind, dope dealers are, I believe, considered by Tallahassee low, right? So we can just let them out of jail every other day. Put them in jail today, they're out tomorrow morning. So that needs to change. Thank you.
Well, Jim, how much of a dent, if any, does this put in drug use and drug trafficking in Polk County? 70 people seems like a lot of folks to me.
A lot of folks, and there's a lot of people nervous right now. I mean, I know that's the word around Haines City, but it's not going to stop. This will never stop. Never.
And were they targeting just the east side of the county, or?
No, they're countywide. But the bottom line is it's just not going to stop, and until the criminal justice system, because I am reminded every day since I took over as chief. I started as a young deputy. I don't want to put out my age, but it seems like we're going backwards. You put somebody in jail for a lot of felonies and they're out of jail tomorrow. And then I know when the sheriff became sheriff, that completely changed. People stayed in jail for a long time. Now we're going back to the same system we had. So for the good people that live in Haines City, you need to start talking to your legislatures, because it's not us. We're doing our job. We're putting them in jail, and the system's letting them out the next day. Any other questions? Thank you.
Lieutenant was sent here by his chief, Chris Velasquez. Chief Velasquez is a dear friend of ours. He had other business and couldn't be here. And apparently he told the lieutenant, whatever you say, don't say anything. Because the lieutenant said, that's good. I'm here. They can see the Lake Wells police uniform, and it's our visual of solidarity. Any last questions? Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you the next time